Everyone ages, and with that comes the inevitability of planning for the later years of life, and eventually, end-of-life care. If you're married, this responsibility extends not only to your own parents, but also to your spouse's parents. I, for one, have always treated my husband's family with the same care and concern as my own. After all, I married into this family, and I believed it was only natural to take on these responsibilities. However, it seemed my in-laws didn't see me as family. To them, I was merely a convenient housekeeper, or perhaps an ATM. I'm just a part-time worker, scraping by, managing our finances and household with effort and diligence. Despite my sacrifices, my in-laws, as well as my sister-in-law, showed me no gratitude, kindness, or reciprocation. They simply took advantage of my goodwill and hard work. When my sister-in-law had her first baby, I brought a thoughtful gift and hurried over to congratulate her. But when I arrived at her home, she greeted me alone at the door without so much as letting me see the baby. "Why are you trying to barge into our house? Just leave your gift at the door and go home." I was stunned by her rudeness. After years of enduring their whims and shouldering their burdens, I had finally had enough. If they wanted to treat me like an outsider, then so be it. I would start acting like one. My first step? Cutting off the monthly financial support I had been providing to my in-laws. My name is Michelle Davison. I'm 40 years old and live with my husband, Ryan. We don't have children, a choice we made together due to our laid-back personalities. Recently, I've noticed signs of early menopause, unexpected hot flashes, disrupted sleep, and occasional fevers at night. Despite my health challenges, I managed to keep myself busy and work 5 days a week at a part-time job. A few months ago, we celebrated my father's retirement. My parents had long dreamed of leaving the city for a more peaceful lifestyle, and they often consulted me for advice. They finally settled on a moderately convenient suburb, about an hour and a half away by train, where they purchased a comfortable condo. After helping them move and settle in, I felt relieved knowing they were beginning a quiet, enjoyable chapter in their lives. Their new home is close to medical facilities, and they've already arranged for future accommodations at a senior living facility nearby. As long as they remain healthy, I have little reason to worry. On the other hand, my in-laws' situation was much less stable. Ryan's mother had mentioned strange behavior from his father some time ago, but Ryan hadn't even made an effort to visit or call. Ryan has a much younger sister, Jenna, who is another challenge altogether. She often said things like, "You and Ryan will handle it if anything happens to Mom and Dad, right?" Jenna showed no intention of stepping up for her parents. She hates detailed tasks and complicated procedures, often looking to delegate to others whenever possible. Ryan shares many of her tendencies. If I didn't take the initiative, discussions about his parents' care would never progress. While I quietly endured their apathy, I refrained from speaking up, knowing that any input from me would result in them dumping even more responsibility on my shoulders. Though not biologically connected to my in-laws, I found myself worrying far more about their well-being than their own children did. Based on Ryan's mother's accounts, it seemed like his father was showing symptoms of dementia. While dementia isn't curable, slowing its progression is possible with family support and proper care. Even if we considered moving him to a care facility, there was no guarantee we'd find an opening soon in this overcrowded senior care system. I mentioned these concerns to Ryan, suggesting that we visit facilities and secure a spot as early as possible. "Yeah, you're probably right," Ryan replied half-heartedly, but nothing ever came of it. Time passed with no progress until Ryan's father fell at home and had to be hospitalized. The fall resulted in a fractured hip, and additional health conditions were discovered during his hospital stay. The sudden change also caused his dementia to advance rapidly. Tasks he had managed just fine before were now impossible, and Ryan was caught off guard by how quickly things had deteriorated. "How could this happen so fast?" Ryan muttered, looking stressed. "I couldn't help but snap. This was bound to happen eventually. You should have prepared yourself for this possibility." Jenna visited his father only once during his hospital stay. She didn't handle a single piece of laundry or paperwork and left without so much as a word of thanks to me. It was infuriating to watch the siblings act so detached, leaving everything to me while I juggled their father's care and hospital arrangements. Watching Ryan's father stare blankly at the ceiling, I couldn't suppress my frustrations. His declining health was worrisome, but so was the mounting cost of his extended hospital stay. Ryan and I needed to discuss how we'd manage these expenses. Even if his condition improved, his dementia meant a care facility would likely be necessary. Estimating the costs of caregiving was a priority, and I also worried about Ryan's mother living alone in their old house. While I disliked Ryan's mother for her years of harsh treatment toward me, I couldn't just ignore her situation. She had begun showing signs of early dementia herself. Though it wasn't yet severe enough to warrant immediate intervention, it raised questions about how long she could live alone safely. Their home was large, old, and difficult for one elderly person to maintain. After discussing our options, Ryan, his mother, and I decided to sell the house. The proceeds would go toward his father's hospital bills and a more manageable living arrangement for his mother. Ryan and I planned to purchase a modest home, keeping the possibility of having his mother live with us in the future. "I don't want to live with you right away, but I want to be close enough for emergencies," his mother had said. The underlying assumption was that I, not Ryan or Jenna, would handle those emergencies. That had become so normalized that no one even thought to ask me if I was okay with it. To make things easier for her, we proposed renting her a small nearby apartment. Jenna didn't object to the plan. "That's fine by me," she said, clearly relieved that she wouldn't have to get involved. Ryan's mother, however, seemed slightly reluctant. "I always imagined living with Jenna someday, but I suppose I'll have to settle for this," she said. Jenna, unmarried at 30, was in a relationship and considering marriage. It was clear neither Jenna nor Ryan's mother wanted to burden Jenna's potential new family with caregiving responsibilities. Unsurprisingly, Ryan passively watched the conversation unfold without contributing anything. Ryan's mother heaped gratitude onto him while I stayed quiet. Being a daughter-in-law is such a thankless job, I thought to myself. With a general plan in place, we moved forward with selling the house. That's when the first major problem arose. The house was still under Ryan's father's name. Legally, only the property owner could sell it, and his father's deteriorating health made that impossible. The real estate agent advised us to appoint a legal guardian for his father to handle the property sale. Typically, this role goes to a close family member, but there's no strict rule about it. I explained this to Ryan, but as expected, he refused to get involved. "Just let me know when the paperwork's ready. You're better at this stuff anyway." His dismissive attitude made my blood boil. "This isn't just paperwork. You're his son and the eldest child. You should be handling this," I retorted. "I don't see the point," It's just an old house, and the money will go to bills anyway. His lack of concern left me seething. I realized arguing was futile and decided to take on the guardian role myself. But I made it clear to Ryan and Jenna that I wouldn't tolerate interference later. Once I handle this, you both need to stay out of it, I warned them. They both agreed without hesitation, which only underscored how little they cared. Acting as the legal guardian involved navigating a labyrinth of paperwork and court filings. While exhausting, I kept going, knowing how critical the house sale was for covering Ryan's father's care. Just as I completed the paperwork, tragedy struck. Ryan's father passed away unexpectedly. He has seemed stable, so the news left everyone shocked. Ryan, as the eldest son, nominally took charge of funeral arrangements. In reality, most of the planning fell to me while Ryan and Jenna remained unhelpful. Ryan's mother struggled with worsening memory issues, often forgetting who some of the attendees were. One guest remarked, "Michelle, you're the rock holding this family together." It was meant as a compliment, but it only deepened my resentment. Why is it always me? I thought. After the funeral, the property ownership had to be legally transferred to the next of kin. Once again, Ryan and Jenna declined. I don't want to deal with the hassle. Just sell it and let me know when you have the money. Yeah, same. Just make sure I get my share. Their selfishness was staggering. I snapped. That money will be used for your mother's care. It's not a windfall for you two to split. Oh, come on, Michelle. It's not like Dad was in the hospital that long. We deserve a little extra. Exactly. We're his kids, after all. I clenched my fists, barely containing my frustration. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had done all the work while they casually discussed their share of the money. Determined to prevent them from squandering the proceeds, I focused on securing a buyer for the house. The real estate agent I worked with was skilled and proposed splitting the property into 2 lots for higher market value. The strategy worked, and we sold the property for more than the original estimate. The funds allowed us to purchase a modest home for Ryan and me and a nearby apartment for his mother. Ryan's mother was thrilled with her new apartment, though she predictably directed her gratitude solely at Ryan. Despite the slight, I bit my tongue and focused on the positives. Life seemed to settle into routine after the move. I juggled my part-time job with caring for Ryan's mother, preparing her meals, managing her medications, and ensuring her comfort. Every decision I made prioritized her well-being, even as the work took a toll on me. But the more I gave, the more entitled Jenna and Ryan's mother became. Jenna occasionally demanded money, citing her pregnancy as an excuse to avoid work. Ryan's mother, meanwhile, complained endlessly about minor inconveniences. I poured my energy into maintaining her quality of life, from buying special clothes to installing safety features in her apartment. Yet neither she nor her children showed me any appreciation. I tried to console myself with the thought that I was doing the right thing, but the constant disrespect made it harder to endure. Despite everything, I held on to the hope that Jenna's baby would bring some joy and perhaps soften the family dynamics. I imagined her child bringing Ryan's mother some happiness, possibly slowing the progression of her dementia. And maybe, just maybe, Jenna would finally grow up and take on some responsibility. A week after Jenna gave birth, I visited her home with a carefully chosen gift for the baby. My expectations weren't high, but I believed showing kindness was the right thing to do. Jenna greeted me at the door, wearing a sour expression. Congratulations, Jenna. How are you feeling? Is the baby doing well? Yeah, whatever. What do you want? Her dismissive tone caught me off guard. She opened the door just enough to stand halfway outside, one foot awkwardly propped in a sandal. I tried to keep things civil. "I brought a gift for the baby. May I come in?" Jenna sighed loudly, her annoyance palpable. "What are you trying to do? Push your way in? Just leave the gift and go." Her rudeness struck a nerve. I thought of all the times I had helped her and her family, the countless sacrifices I'd made. And now she couldn't even invite me in for a minute to meet her child? Jenna thrust her hand out. "Come on, give it to me already." I froze, feeling the weight of every insult and unspoken slight crash over me. It became painfully clear. To Jenna and the rest of them, I was just a tool, someone to be used and discarded. For years, I had justified my efforts by telling myself I was part of their family, but at that moment, I realized they had never seen me that way. "You know what, Jenna? Forget it. Keep living your comfortable little life. Just don't expect me to be part of it anymore." I turned on my heel and left without handing over the gift. My next step was clear. I would stop all financial support for Ryan's mother and Jenna immediately. No more playing the role of the self-sacrificing wife or sister-in-law. The following Monday was payday, but this time, not a single cent went to them. That evening, my phone buzzed with a call from Jenna. "What's going on? Mom said her rent payment didn't go through. You're still covering it, right?" "No, I'm not. That's your mom's responsibility. Or yours. You're her actual family, remember?" "You can't just stop like that. How's she supposed to manage?" "That's not my concern anymore, Jenna. Figure it out." I hung up, feeling a mixture of relief and anger. Cutting them off financially was only the beginning. I also informed the landlord of Ryan's mother's apartment that the lease would not be renewed. She would have to move in with Jenna or find another solution. Of course, Jenna wasn't happy about this. Over the next week, she bombarded me with calls and texts, demanding an explanation. Each time I repeated the same thing, I was done. Meanwhile, I began making arrangements to sell the house. It was legally mine, thanks to the earlier transfer of ownership. Ryan and his family would have to live somewhere else to live. Predictably, Ryan was the next to reach out. "What the hell, Michelle? Jenna said you're selling the house. You can't just kick us out." "Actually, I can. It's my house. You're all free to make other arrangements." "You're being ridiculous. What about Mom? Where's she supposed to go?" "That's for you and Jenna to figure out. I'm not involved anymore." Ryan sputtered excuses, but I cut him off. "You and your sister made it clear that I'm just a stranger, so now I'm acting like one." Over the next month, the house sold, and Ryan, his mother, and Jenna were forced to move. Jenna's husband, overwhelmed by the chaos, eventually left her. Ryan struggled to find a new place, and his mother's health began to deteriorate further. Meanwhile, I moved into a cozy apartment across town. For the first time in years, I felt free. My part-time job became full-time, and I started saving for my future. I had no idea what the next chapter of my life would bring, but I was ready to face it on my own terms.
Mother-in-law's shocking snub at sushi dinner backfires hilariously.
"You're not family. I only made reservations for us. Just hand me the baby and wait outside." Sophia said this with a smile that could almost be described as menacing, then walked into the restaurant. She could afford to smile like that for now, but it wouldn't be long before she regretted her actions. And what happened next went far beyond anything I could have imagined. My name is Anna. I'm 40 years old. Lately, I've been worried about retirement, so I've just started investing. At my age, these concerns are pretty common, but I imagine the younger generation must feel even more anxious about the future. All I hope for is a happy future for my kids. Now, I'm the kind of adult who worries about the happiness of children and the future of young people, but when I was younger, I could barely think beyond my own life. This story goes back to my 20s. At that time, I had just been proposed to by John, my husband. It felt like the peak of my life, and I was on cloud 9. I honestly believed that just waking up every day with this happiness could help me conquer anything. Well, his last girlfriend was much prettier than you. That was the very first thing my mother-in-law said to me when we met for the first time to discuss the wedding. Mom, what are you even saying? Are you trying to start a fight with Anna already? Sorry. It was just a little joke. It was a terrible joke, especially for such an important occasion. John, I can't believe that you're really getting married. I'm going to be so lonely. Mom, I've been living on my own for years. This isn't any different. I just hoped we could spend more time together as mother and son before this. That's weird, Mom. Stop saying stuff like that. On the surface, the conversation seemed lighthearted, but I could feel the rejection lurking in Sophia's eyes. Do you not want me to be your daughter-in-law? I'm the one getting married, so what does it matter? Oh no, of course not. I'm very happy about this news. Except her words didn't match her expression at all. Although the rest of the conversation seemed polite, she never looked at me in the eye, occasionally glared at me, and even ignored some of my comments. These actions were subtle, so John didn't notice a thing. If John's younger sister Emily had been there, she might have sensed the tension between us as women often do. Sophia's behavior was so subtle that even I started doubting myself. But this was my first time meeting a future in-law to discuss marriage. I tried to convince myself that this was just how it usually went. Expecting to be welcomed with open arms as part of the family may have been naive. In the end, the marriage was approved. Or rather, John never expected any resistance, and there wasn't really a discussion about approval. From there, the wedding proceeded as expected, and I had very little interaction with Sophia before the ceremony. Sophia's cold attitude persisted, but I figured that once the wedding was set, we were in the clear, so I decided to ignore it. I told myself it wasn't realistic to expect immediate acceptance. I'd heard that mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationships were rarely smooth, and the ones that were amicable were the exception. With that in mind, I tried to stay optimistic. Little did I know that the real trials would begin after the wedding. After marrying John, I quit my job and spent my days at home, waiting for him to return from work. In other words, I became a housewife. However, I planned to start working again, so I was in the middle of job hunting. One day, after finishing my chores, I was enjoying a peaceful afternoon watching TV and flipping through a job magazine. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. At our house, even package deliveries were rare, so hearing the doorbell was unusual. Back then, there were frequent reports of odd daytime incidents, and since our intercom didn't have a camera, I nervously peered through the door viewer, and standing there was Sophia. Sophia? I quickly opened the door, and Sophia's brow furrowed slightly. You took your time opening the door. It had been a while since we last saw each other, and this was her first greeting, typical Sophia. Besides, she hadn't even informed me she was coming. Sorry about that. With all the recent incidents, I've been a little cautious. I laughed nervously, but Sophia didn't crack a smile. If anything, her expression grew harsher. Let me in already. Oh, of course, please come in. Feeling completely overpowered by her demeanor, I reluctantly led her into the house. Well, this place is cleaner than I expected. What do you mean expected? I'm actually pretty tidy, you know. Well, your face isn't so tidy. That blunt jab hit me like a right hook. I was speechless. I thought I'd misheard, and an incredulous noise escaped my lips. What? Ignoring my reaction, Sophia's lips curled slightly in a smug smile. Her eyes, however, remained cold. What a skillful display of malice. You know about John's ex-girlfriend, right? The sudden topic change left me bewildered. What? She was such a wonderful girl, pretty, well-mannered, and a great cook. John would have been so much happier with a wife like her. Oh well, I'll do my best to make you feel that way about me too. I doubt it. You're the complete opposite of her. How infuriating. Having to listen to endless talk about a girlfriend from his high school days. I couldn't help but suspect that Sophia had driven her away somehow. Ever since our marriage, I'd sensed that Sophia felt as though I'd stolen her son from her. When John introduced his first girlfriend, she probably used the fact that he was underage as an excuse to meddle in their relationship. Right now, all I could do was endure her snide remarks and verbal jabs. I couldn't think of anything to say, and the brief silence seemed to irritate her. Say something, won't you? Why should I have to come up with conversation topics and entertain her when she showed up unannounced? Still, I hated the tension, so I desperately searched for something to talk about. Oh, by the way, I met a friend recently, and she told me she's pregnant. She looked so happy. I couldn't help but feel moved seeing how much joy motherhood brought her. What? Aren't you unemployed? Are you just spending John's money while you go out with your friends? Her response was completely unexpected, and I was momentarily at a loss for words. What? No, that's not true. I'm spending the money I saved before we got married. Well, that's fine then. Just don't go around splurging with John's money. I wouldn't do that. We keep separate finances and only rely on each other when necessary. Besides, I plan to start working again soon. Are you even looking for a job? Of course. Look, I've got a magazine right here. I picked up the job magazine sitting nearby and showed it to her. Sophia gave me a look as if I had just handed her something dirty. I thought you keep the house clean, but I guess I was wrong. What? What do you mean by that? That job magazine. You just grabbed it off the table, didn't you? Yes, I was just reading it before you arrived. Oh, so you're blaming me now? No, how did this even turn into that? I wanted to sigh out loud. Being shot down over everything is exhausting. Having everything I say dismissed is honestly a bit disheartening. Dismissed? That's a bit much. If anything, your tone is disrespectful to me. And there it was. She outright called me a bad daughter-in-law. Deep down, I'd already known how she felt, but hearing it so bluntly still stung. Sophia continued to criticize me for going out with friends, but eventually she seemed satisfied enough to leave. Ugh, I'm so drained. Honestly, I didn't want Sophia to visit again. If she had to come over, I wished it would be when John was home. If this continued, our relationship might reach a point of no return. With that in mind, I told John about what had happened that day. I had no idea Mom was the type to bully her daughter-in-law. I thought you were joking, but I guess it's true. John tried to lighten the mood, but he was clearly surprised. It made sense. Sophia had always been a good mother to him. I think it's best if we keep some distance for now. I'll tell her to stop coming over unannounced, and to only visit when I'm home. I'll make sure to phrase it gently so it doesn't escalate things. Thanks, and sorry for causing trouble. No, you've got it backward. I'm the one who should be apologizing for my mom making your life harder. Honestly, you don't need to force yourself to get along with her. This marriage is about us, not her. She might be your mother-in-law legally, but she's my parent at the end of the day. Don't waste energy tiptoeing around her. Just tell me about these things and I'll handle them. Thanks. You're so reliable. I think I've fallen for you all over again. What? Why don't you just say that you're head over heels in love with me? I laughed it off, but honestly, I did fall for him a bit more, though I kept that to myself. Dealing with Sophia was exhausting, but moments like this made me realize how lucky I was to have chosen John as my husband. After that, Sophia stopped getting involved with me directly. It's likely, thanks in part to my husband regularly keeping in touch with my mother-in-law, ensuring that any frustrations on her end didn't build up. Still, I couldn't imagine that it was enough to make her fully accept our marriage or feel at peace. But not long after, I found out I was pregnant. Both my parents and John were overjoyed by the news. Everyone was thrilled that our family would be growing. But I felt anxious about telling Sophia. Would she even acknowledge the child I was carrying as her grandchild? Would she celebrate the news? With those thoughts in mind, I had John deliver the news to her. Surprisingly, after hearing the news, Sophia called and said she wanted to meet both of us. Do you think your mom will actually be happy? I'm a little nervous. Don't worry. If she says anything, I'll handle it. And so we went to meet Sophia, but what happened next was completely unexpected. Oh my goodness, that's wonderful news. Truly wonderful. Sophia was even more ecstatic about my pregnancy than my own parents. She was so happy that I couldn't help but be a little suspicious. After that, Sophia was surprisingly supportive. She would tell John to take care of me and even offered to help when I got up to do something. She also sent us regular deliveries of easy-to-eat meals during my pregnancy. Since John had asked her to avoid unannounced visits, the food arrived via delivery services. The vegetable-heavy menus were a thoughtful gesture for me, but John lamented that they weren't to his taste. Thanks to this, my pregnancy went smoothly, and I gave birth to our daughter Lily without any complications. Sophia cried tears of joy when she held her first grandchild, and it felt like our rocky relationship had been a lie. I can't believe the day has come for me to hold my first grandchild. I'm so happy. Hearing those words, I thought that pregnancy and childbirth had transformed our family dynamics. But that change was only temporary. After my discharge from the hospital, Sophia suggested having a dinner party to celebrate the birth. It was a small gathering, just John, me, Sophia, and Emily. A small family dinner. John initially wanted to decline, saying I shouldn't be pushed so soon after giving birth. But Sophia insisted she wanted to spend time with her grandchild, so I agreed. On the day of the dinner, John ended up running late due to work, so I headed to the upscale sushi restaurant Sophia had chosen with Lily. When I arrived at the restaurant, Sophia and Emily were already there. Hi, Sophia. Hi, Emily. I waved, but Emily looked uneasy, and Sophia's expression was visibly tense. Where's John? Oh, he's running late because of work. Sorry about that. I see. That's fine. Suddenly, Sophia reached over and snatched Lily from my arms. Wait, Sophia, what are you doing? Oh, she's just so precious. She looks exactly like John. Her actions were as if Lily were her own child. Then Sophia said something I couldn't believe. I only made reservations for family tonight, so you'll have to wait outside. Just leave Lily with me. What are you talking about? I'm Lily's mother. To me, a daughter-in-law is a stranger. Lily is part of our family, not yours. Don't interfere. Just wait outside. Her harsh words left me feeling both angry and confused. I wanted to take Lily back, but seeing her peacefully asleep in Sophia's arms made it impossible to pull her away. Please, just give Lily back to me. As I pleaded, Emily hesitantly stepped in. Anna, I'm so sorry. Mom, can you calm down a little? What are you talking about, Emily? This is a family matter. I was standing outside the restaurant, unsure of what to do. Then, a man approached me. Is everything okay? You've been standing here for a while. Oh, my family's being a little mean. They're making me wait outside. After I explained the situation, the man furrowed his brows. That doesn't sound right. Let's go in together. I'll come with you. Before I could respond, the man opened the restaurant door. Sophia turned to us with a smile, but her expression froze the moment she saw the man. Chris, what are you doing here? Chris responded with a calm determination. I heard what's going on here. I can't believe you treat your daughter-in-law like this. What followed was Chris firmly admonishing Sophia, breaking her facade, and revealing the truth. Eventually, John arrived, and what was supposed to be a dinner turned into a family intervention. Sophia was banned from seeing Lily and was distanced from the family. Afterward, we regained our peace, and Chris became a close family friend. It's strange how human connections work. All I hope for is that this happiness continues for a long time.
A marriage scam? Mother-in-law boasts about her elite education, right-pointing arrow, but shocking twist leaves her speechless.
I'm Emily, 27 years old, the eldest of two sisters raised by a single mom. My dad passed away when I was little, and my mom raised my sister and me all by herself. I have nothing but respect for her. Lately, it seems like my friends have been getting married one after the other, and it's made me start thinking about the future with my boyfriend. My boyfriend's name is Daniel. He's 3 years older than me and just turned 30. We hit it off 3 years ago when he came to my office as a sales rep for a client company. Because of all the weddings I've been attending recently, in the corner of my mind, I wondered how Daniel felt about marriage. Except I didn't want to bring it up first and risk making him feel pressured. As a result, I couldn't bring myself to ask how he felt, nor did he bring this subject up himself either. Emily, will you marry me? When he surprised me with his proposal during our 3rd anniversary dinner at a restaurant, I was completely shocked. Are you sure? You want me to be your wife? Of course. Well, only if you say yes. As I looked to him for confirmation with tears in my eyes, he just smiled back softly. I couldn't think of a single reason to say no. He quickly set a date to visit my mom and formally give her the news of our engagement. My mom was already familiar with him since the 3 of us had often gone out for dinner together. As expected, she was overjoyed. Daniel and I started dreaming about a happy future together, full of hope. But sadly, that happiness didn't last long. After Daniel met my family, we also completed the introductions to his family without any issues. When Daniel mentioned my workplace, Smith Holdings, his mother Margaret seemed to perk up. Smith Holdings is a well-known company around here. It usually left a positive impression during first-time introductions. I hoped his family would eventually come to know me for who I truly was, and not just for the good reputation of my employer. But for now, I was relieved that the introductions went smoothly. Since we hadn't planned on a wedding ceremony, we moved ahead with the marriage registration after the family meetings. After Daniel informed his parents about our marriage registration, Margaret suggested, "Why don't we go out for dinner sometime?" That's how we ended up having our first family dinner together. So, Emily, what do you like about Daniel? His education, or maybe his paycheck? As soon as we sat down, Margaret hit me with this outlandish question. I respect Daniel's education, but more than that, I'm drawn to his character. Oh, sure, I see. Well, I'm glad you understand Daniel's exceptional education. It's top-notch, isn't it? Before I could confidently finish my answer, she cut me off completely. Anyways, Emily, you work at Smith Holdings, right? You must have graduated from a top university, just like my Daniel. Well, it really isn't much to speak about. I'm not even sure that you would have heard of it. Oh, that's fine, I suppose. Except our family has always been full of top achievers. Her words were laced with sarcasm. Mom, this is our first dinner together. Let's keep things light, okay? Thanks to Daniel's intervention, Margaret didn't ask me anything more. Still, the dinner left a lingering unease in my heart. About a month after that dinner, we arranged a formal meeting between the 2 families. We booked a beautiful lodge for the occasion, where both families could gather and share a meal. Oh, isn't your father joining us today? Margaret wasted no time asking my family questions, even before everyone had taken their seats. Actually, my husband passed away when my daughters were young, so I raised them on my own since they were little girls. Mom, I didn't think it mattered for our marriage, so I didn't mention it to you. Linda's an amazing mom, and I'm so happy to have her as part of our family. Oh my, I had no idea Daniel was marrying someone from a single-parent household. That must mean that you were quite poor growing up. Compared to our accomplished family, it's quite a difference in status. I wonder if this will work out. Yes, without their father, I made sure to raise my daughters to be respectable and capable women. I'm confident Emily won't cause any trouble for Daniel or your family. Even so, children raised by single mothers in poor conditions often have something wrong with them. Meanwhile, Daniel graduated from a top university, and so did his brother Michael. Their father and grandfather both attended prestigious schools too. Don't you think this is a bit out of our league? It's concerning. Don't tell me. You really married Daniel just for his salary, didn't you? I should have trusted my instinct on this. Margaret gave me a sharp, suspicious look. Anyway, I think I'll just excuse myself now. I don't care to breathe the same air as someone so far beneath us. Margaret stood up and left the room, ignoring everyone's attempts to stop her. Well, since you two went through the trouble of arranging this, let's try to enjoy the meal. Linda's cheerful voice echoed hollowly in the room. Despite her effort, everyone finished their meal uncomfortably, and the gathering ended on an awkward note. After the dinner, neither family brought this incident up much, and Daniel and I became so busy with our daily lives that we almost forgot about that day. One day, I was at work, focusing on compiling urgent documents in between my regular tasks. Suddenly, the usual calm of the office was shattered by the sound of someone shouting. "Bring Emily Klein out here. I know she's in this building." Klein is my husband's last name, and though I'm still not used to it, Emily Klein is my married name. I rushed to the entrance, where I found the receptionist frozen in shock. Standing firmly in the lobby was Margaret. "There you are, you cunning woman. Everyone here, listen up. This woman is a marriage fraud, and she's lied about her education too." Margaret was completely out of control. What's going on, Margaret? Don't you dare address me like we're equals. I'm here to make sure your marriage is cancelled today. I told the receptionist. It's okay, you can step away for now. And she quickly retreated inside. But in her place, my coworkers started gathering, curious about the commotion. It's suspicious that someone like her works at a prestigious company like this. Everyone, don't be fooled. This woman is not only a marriage fraud, but also a fraud about her education. Margaret's rant continued, and my coworkers started giving me awkward, uncomfortable looks. I'm so sorry for the disturbance, everyone. This is my mother-in-law. I'll handle it, so please go back to work. Completely embarrassed, I quickly apologized to my coworkers, who reluctantly returned to their desks, while still glancing back at us. I've been telling Daniel for years, only someone from a prestigious university is good enough to marry into our family. When I heard you worked at Smith Holdings, I assumed you were highly educated and well off. Instead, he brings home some poor girl. Margaret, please calm down. Let's move somewhere private, and I'll explain everything. You just don't want your lies exposed at work, do you? But I'll reveal who you really are. Just then, the entrance doors swung open, and in walked a man who looked strikingly similar to Daniel. Mom, you haven't changed one bit, have you? Michael, what are you doing here? Wait, are you? You must be Emily, a Michael Klein. To my surprise, he turned out to be one of our company's clients. My Michael works at such a prestigious company. Mom, stop. Both Daniel and I have had our lives messed up by your obsession with appearances. Were you planning to rely on us for money after Dad retires? Oh, of course not. How could you think that? Boy, was I smart to leave the house before Daniel. At that moment, the door to the back office opened, and out walked my mother, Linda. Would you mind if I joined the conversation? Linda, what are you doing here? Allow me to introduce myself again. I'm Linda Smith, the CEO of Smith Holdings. Linda handed Margaret her business card, and Margaret went pale. Oh, I see. You gave your daughter a job, despite her lack of education. Low education? Emily graduated from the University of Toronto in Canada, and she did it as a scholarship student. The University of Toronto? In Canada? Mom, did you mistake the University of Toronto for something else? Margaret was completely speechless. Whether Emily stays employed here will depend on her performance, just like everyone else. But so far, she's been excelling. Margaret left the building soon after, escorted by her husband. Since that incident, she never showed up in front of Daniel and me again. Instead, Daniel and I deepened our bond and returned to a peaceful, happy life. Emily, you have no idea how happy it makes me to be able to spend forever with you. Me too. I'm confident that we'll be able to face whatever the future brings, as long as we're together. And so, we began our journey as a new family.
New Year's gathering. Mill says you don't belong, so I erased myself, leaving everyone screaming.
Someone like you, who lacks proper upbringing, has no place meddling in the affairs of our esteemed family. Leave this place immediately. In that instant, I felt the strength drain from my body, and a wave of dizziness washed over me. The years I had spent serving my mother-in-law with dedication shattered like fragile glass. Heather looked down at me with an icy gaze. Why are you so silent? Hurry up and leave. Or are you planning to stay here? Seeing my trembling lips, Heather raised her voice even further. Did you really think you, unaware of the Willis' family prestige, could remain part of this household? Such audacity shows your true nature. A sharp pain pierced deep within my chest. Tears, held back for so long, began to trickle down my cheeks. In the living room where relatives gathered for New Year's, I alone was cast aside, pushed to the fringes like an outsider. The cold touch of the floor painfully reminded me of how out of place I was. My husband averted his gaze, keeping his eyes fixed downward. Despite being my partner of 10 years, he felt like a stranger in that moment. Furthermore, I cannot forgive you for deceiving my son into marrying you. Your actions are unforgivable, and this marriage is a glaring mismatch. Heather deliberately walked toward me with slow steps. Her eyes were filled with blatant disdain. The tense atmosphere was suffocating, and the relatives' cold stares felt like countless needles pricking my skin. If only I came from a more suitable background, I might not have faced this humiliation. However, the 10 years I dedicated to this family were not a lie. Trembling in the corner of the room, I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a document containing shocking truths. Heather opened the envelope, her expression unchanging, and read its contents. My name is Chelsea Willis, and this is the story of how my life within the Willis family became suffocating. My first meeting with Heather, my mother-in-law, was marked by a cold and tense atmosphere. Still, I believed that as family, we would eventually find common ground and grow closer. However, these hopes were crushed as time went on. Chelsea, what did you use for the soup this morning? Heather's sharp gaze pierced through me during breakfast. I used celery. I answered cautiously, but Heather clicked her tongue in disapproval. Celery, I suppose that's the flavor of your family, but in this household, we don't use such cheap broth. Poor Ryan, having to eat such subpar meals. My father-in-law, Lance, looked up from his newspaper with a grimace but said nothing. My husband, Ryan, remained silent as well. All I could do was bow my head and murmur an apology. Heather's criticisms didn't stop at my cooking. She would find fault in every aspect of my daily life. Chelsea, is that skirt what you're planning to wear to work? She addressed me while I was getting ready in the morning. Yes, I thought this would be practical and comfortable. Heather let out a dramatic sigh as she glared at me. Practical? That's just a sloppy excuse for being lazy. As the wife of a Willis, you need to dress more properly. Make sure you're presentable and not embarrassing to be seen with. What exactly did it mean to be the wife of a Willis? The more Heather talked about her proud lineage, the more dubious it seemed. Claims about being samurai retainers or having a grandfather who was a congressman sounded grand, but I doubted their validity. Regardless, Heather's words gave her no right to belittle me constantly. Even at home, I felt no peace under her watchful eyes. Chelsea, you forgot to iron this shirt again. Women in the Willis family are never this careless. Did your family raise you with such disregard for basic manners? Every time she mentioned my upbringing, it struck a nerve. My parents had passed away when I was young, and I was raised by distant relatives. Heather's words seemed to dismiss the warmth of a family I had never known. I'm sorry. I'll fix it right away. Don't just fix it right away. Do it properly from the start. You're a Willis wife. Act like it. It was about 6 months into my marriage when I finally told Ryan about Heather's behavior. Ryan, can we talk about your mother? He looked uncomfortable as soon as I brought it up. Mom can be strict, but she doesn't mean any harm. Doesn't mean any harm? What was that supposed to mean? What was I supposed to make of that? Heather's treatment only escalated after that. She became particularly harsh about the fact that I hadn't yet had children. Chelsea, why haven't you had children yet? The Willis family has always been blessed with strong male heirs. Are you even trying? The moment I heard her words, it felt like my heart froze. The truth was, Ryan was the one with fertility issues, a fact confirmed by the doctor. But there was no way I could reveal that to Heather. I'm sorry, we're doing our best. That was all I could muster. Heather scoffed at my response. Doing your best? Well, I won't hold my breath. Despite her cruel remarks, I endured it. I didn't want to jeopardize my relationship with Ryan. To me, family was something irreplaceable. Having grown up as an orphan in the care of relatives, I valued this family despite its challenges. But recently, I started to question Ryan's behavior. He was working late more often, coming home at odd hours. Our household finances were shrinking noticeably. These changes fed my growing sense of unease. Still, I tried to trust him. But the combination of Heather's relentless abuse and Ryan's indifference was slowly breaking something inside me. How much longer could I endure this? Chelsea, are you listening? Her voice snapped me out of my thoughts. I turned around slowly, forcing a strained smile, and nodded. Yes, I'm listening. But deep down, something within me was already crumbling. Heather decided to organize a New Year's gathering to showcase the family lineage. She announced it during a conversation about Ryan's recent promotion. While Lance was talking about Ryan's new position, Heather interrupted with excitement. It's important to remind everyone of the greatness of our family. That day, Heather instructed Ryan to invite all his paternal relatives. Not a single relative from Heather's side was invited. Heather, won't you invite anyone from your side of the family? She sighed dramatically, as if annoyed by the question. My family lives far away, and they're not the type to appreciate gatherings like this. Her words felt laced with disdain. The day of the gathering arrived, and the house was filled with Ryan's extended family. Heather stood in the center of the main room, proudly displaying a family tree. Our ancestors were loyal retainers of feudal lords. This family has a noble and storied history. As you can see, my grandfather was a congressman who contributed greatly to the development of this region. The family tree was filled with unfamiliar names. Heather meticulously described each person's achievements, emphasizing their importance. Yet something about her story didn't sit right with me. On the far right edge of the family tree, a surname caught my attention. It was the same as the family names of my childhood friends-in-laws. That family was from the same area Heather claimed to be her birthplace. As Heather continued her monologue, I couldn't shake the growing doubt in my mind. That night, I reached out to my friend. Sorry for the sudden question, but isn't your husband's family name Willis? Yes, why do you ask? It's about something my mother-in-law Heather mentioned. She's claiming a family lineage that seems very similar to your in-laws. I explained briefly about the family tree Heather displayed and her boastful claims. Heather's story doesn't seem to match what I've heard about your husband's family. That's strange. Let me check with my in-laws and get back to you. Meanwhile, Ryan's behavior became increasingly suspicious. He was quiet, distant, and often seemed on the verge of saying something, only to remain silent. Is something wrong? I would ask gently, but he'd always avert his gaze. No, it's nothing. His phone rang more often, and he'd leave the room to take calls in private. He would return with a restless expression, further fueling my unease. Still, I wanted to trust him. Heather, however, continued her relentless criticism, which worsened as the New Year's gathering approached. "Chelsea, you must learn to behave in a manner befitting this distinguished family. Everything you do makes you stand out for the wrong reasons." Her words stung deeply. As I waited for my friend's response, time seemed to stretch unbearably long. A few days later, my friend called back. "Chelsea, I checked the family records. Heather's name isn't listed anywhere, and there's no mention of a congressman or feudal retainers in the records either." The moment I heard this, my suspicions solidified into certainty. Heather's proud family story was a fabrication. I asked my friend to send me copies of her family tree and registration documents to verify. Once I had those in hand, I could confront Heather with the truth. But how would I handle the fallout? As New Year's approached, Heather became even more insistent about preparing for the gathering. "Chelsea, don't do anything to embarrass this family during the event. The best contribution you can make is to stay quietly in the corner." I spent sleepless nights, torn between frustration and sadness. Heather's words echoed in my mind, leaving me restless and unable to focus. Then, another question began to haunt me. What secrets was Ryan hiding on his phone? One night, as he slept, I found myself staring at his phone, contemplating whether to check it. I took a deep breath, feeling as though a crucial moment had arrived. Heather's lies and Ryan's secrets, I would uncover everything. The morning of the New Year's gathering, I sat alone at a small corner table in the kitchen. The air was filled with the festive aroma of traditional dishes, but I couldn't feel anything. In front of me, an array of colorful dishes was neatly arranged: black beans, chestnut paste, and kombu rolls. These were all proudly prepared by Heather. I held my chopsticks in my hand, but couldn't bring myself to eat a single bite. From the next room, Heather's laughter rang out. I could hear relatives chatting and laughing, and it was clear Heather was at the center of attention. "Honestly, Chelsea is such a useless daughter-in-law." Her shrill voice pierced through the walls, and the words cut into me like a knife. "She can't even manage basic household tasks properly. How embarrassing to have someone like her in our family." My hands trembled as I clenched the chopsticks. Heather's words echoed in my head, and I felt a sharp pain in my chest. The voices from the next room continued. "Just the other day, she burned one of the dishes for this New Year's meal. Can you believe that?" The relatives chuckled awkwardly at her story, their discomfort palpable, even through the wall. "A daughter-in-law who fails at everything she does. Ryan must have had terrible judgment to choose her." I slowly placed my chopsticks down and folded my trembling hands on my lap. The coldness of my fingers betrayed my struggle to suppress my emotions. Heather's voice grew sharper. "Someone like her doesn't deserve to be part of this distinguished family. She should just leave my son." At that moment, something inside me snapped. My vision blurred as my anger and sorrow bubbled to the surface. I stood up slowly, reached into my bag, and pulled out the envelope containing the truth. My hands trembled as I held it, and I took a deep breath before stepping into the next room. Heather's face immediately soured when she saw me enter. "What do you want now?" The room fell silent as all eyes turned to me. The lively chatter halted, replaced by a heavy tension. I walked to the center of the room, the envelope clutched tightly in my hand. Slowly, I placed it on the table and took a step back. "This is a letter from Ryan's mistress." My voice was steady, even as my hand shook. The room froze, and everyone stared at me in shock. I continued, unwavering. "Inside is also a signed divorce agreement from Ryan. And one more thing, she's pregnant." Gasps and murmurs erupted from the relatives. Heather's face turned pale as she slammed her hand on the table. "That's a lie. This is absurd." But her voice trembled with desperation. "It's not a lie. You can ask Ryan yourself." My voice was cold as I stared directly at her. A relative finally broke the silence, their voice uncertain. "If this is true, then this is a serious matter." Heather frantically tried to explain herself, her words tumbling out incoherently. "Someone must have forged this. It's all lies." but the relatives' glances grew colder. Do you know why I brought this up today? I turned to Heather, meeting her eyes with a steady gaze. You've humiliated me over and over again. You've called me useless, unworthy, a disgrace. But I will not allow you to demean me any longer. My words felt like a declaration, not just to Heather, but to myself. The weight of her oppressive words lifted slightly from my shoulders as I spoke. Heather stood frozen, unable to respond. The room descended into an uneasy silence once more. From behind me, the sound of a chair scraping against the floor echoed. Turning around, I saw Lance, Heather's husband, rising slowly from his seat. His expression was grave and his movements deliberate.
Enough, Heather.
His voice was low, calm, but carried undeniable authority.
What are you saying, Lance?
Her voice wavered, a hint of panic creeping in. Lance took a deep breath before turning to me.
Chelsea, I'm sorry. I should have spoken up sooner. I've watched you suffer for far too long.
His words caught me off guard, and I widened my eyes slightly.
Heather, there's something I've kept hidden for years.
Heather stiffened, her eyes darting toward him.
What are you talking about?
Her voice carried a mix of suspicion and dread.
I have a child with another woman.
Gasps filled the room. Heather's face turned ashen, and she staggered backward.
That's a lie. It has to be. It's not. By your logic, my infidelity is justified if it's for the sake of protecting the family.
His words dripped with irony, and his piercing gaze didn't waver.
You're no better than me. How dare you criticize me? You've hurt Chelsea far worse than I ever could. You've shamed her in front of family, belittled her every move. Whatever faults I have, I won't stand by and let you continue this.
Heather's defiance crumbled under his stern gaze, and she slumped into her chair. I stepped forward, pulling another envelope from my bag. This is the proof of your lies, Heather. I placed the documents, the family tree and the registry records, on the table. Heather's face contorted as she realized what they were.
What is this?
This is the real history of the family you've been pretending to belong to. Heather's hand shook as she hesitantly reached for the papers. Her eyes darted across the pages, and her expression grew increasingly panicked. Your name isn't here. Your entire story is a fabrication. Heather's breath hitched, and she dropped the papers as if they burned her.
No, this can't be.
Her voice cracked, and for the first time, she looked genuinely broken. The room fell silent, the weight of the truth settling over everyone present. The room was suffocatingly quiet, save for Heather's shallow breaths as she stared at the damning papers on the table. Relatives exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of shock, disgust, and pity.
I've had enough, Heather.
His voice broke the silence, steady but heavy with disappointment.
Your lies, your arrogance, your constant need to tear others down. It's gone too far.
Lance, I only wanted to preserve our family's legacy. Her voice was barely above a whisper, the fight in her diminishing with every word.
At what cost? You've alienated Chelsea, disrespected her, and now humiliated yourself in front of everyone.
Heather opened her mouth to protest, but seemed to think better of it, her gaze falling to her lap. I stood there, watching the scene unfold, feeling both vindicated and hollow. This was the moment I had been waiting for, a chance to expose the truth. But it felt like a Pyrrhic victory. I endured so much for the sake of this family. My voice cracked as I spoke, tears welling up despite my best efforts to remain composed. But now, I see that my efforts were wasted. You never saw me as family, only as someone to control and demean. Heather's head shot up at my words, but she didn't reply. Her eyes darted toward the relatives, looking for some shred of support, but none came. Heather, we never imagined you would stoop so low. One of the older relatives finally spoke, her tone laced with disappointment. You owe Chelsea an apology. Heather's lips trembled, but no words came out. Lance sighed heavily and turned to me.
Chelsea, you've been treated unfairly, and for that, I deeply apologize.
I nodded, acknowledging his words, though they didn't erase the years of pain. Gathering my strength, I stepped toward the door, my decision final. This is the end for me. I'll no longer be a part of this household. Gasps rippled through the room as my words sank in.
Chelsea, wait.
Ryan, who had remained silent until now, scrambled to his feet, his face pale.
Don't leave. We can work this out.
I turned to face him, my expression hardened by years of disappointment. It's too late, Ryan. My voice was firm, though it wavered slightly with the weight of my emotions. I'd given everything to this family, and all I've received is ridicule and neglect. I deserve better. Ryan's shoulders slumped, and his face crumpled as he realized there was no convincing me to stay. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving behind the family that had caused me so much pain. As I stepped outside, the crisp winter air filled my lungs, feeling both biting and freeing. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't just tears of sorrow, they were also tears of release. For the first time in years, I felt unshackled. I walked away from the house, each step feeling heavier yet lighter at the same time. The cold wind stung my cheeks, but it also carried a sense of liberation. This was the first step toward reclaiming my life. Over the next few days, I began the process of moving out and filing for divorce. Ryan tried to contact me several times, but I ignored his calls and messages. My focus was on rebuilding my life, free from the toxic environment I had endured for so long. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly smooth, likely because Ryan knew he had no grounds to fight. As for Heather, her fall from grace was swift and unrelenting. The relatives who once tolerated her behavior turned their backs on her, unable to forgive her deceit and cruelty. Lance eventually filed for his own divorce, citing years of emotional manipulation and dishonesty. Heather's facade of superiority crumbled, leaving her isolated and disgraced. Meanwhile, I began to rediscover myself. I moved into a modest apartment, started a new job, and began surrounding myself with people who valued me for who I was. Slowly but surely, I felt the weight of my past lifting. Months turned into a year, and I realized how much stronger I had become. I no longer defined my worth through the eyes of others, especially those who sought to tear me down. One day, out of the blue, I received a call from my old friend Mary. "Chelsea, how are you? I've been meaning to check in on you." "I'm doing well, Mary. Life has been peaceful." "I'm so glad to hear that. Listen, there's someone I'd like you to meet." "Someone to meet?" "Yes, I think you'll find this connection intriguing." Curious but cautious, I agreed to meet Mary's acquaintance. The meeting was set for a quiet cafe in the city. When I arrived, I was greeted by a man named Sean, whose calm demeanor and kind smile immediately put me at ease.
"It's a pleasure to meet you, Chelsea."
His voice was warm, and as we spoke, I felt an unexpected sense of comfort. Sean didn't boast about his background or achievements. Instead, he listened intently as I shared my story, offering thoughtful insights and genuine encouragement.
"You've been through so much, yet here you are, standing strong. That's admirable."
His words struck a chord, and for the first time in a long while, I felt truly seen. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, and before long, I found myself laughing and smiling more than I had in years. Over the following months, Sean and I grew closer, and I began to see a future filled with hope and possibility. He showed me that true strength comes from within, and that my worth was never tied to anyone else's approval. With Sean by my side, I felt ready to embrace a new chapter of my life. Together, we began to build a relationship based on mutual respect, trust, and love. A stark contrast to the life I had left behind. As I look back on my journey, I realized that every challenge I faced had shaped me into the person I was today. And for the first time, I was truly at peace.